Right. All right. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Dorsey's Resource. Tonight, I wanted to discuss and talk about Kanye West meeting with Trump at the White House. I see there was a lot of people, it appears, that were triggered, and there were some people who were overjoyed. So I wanted to also ask you guys, my subscribers, I wanted to get you guys take opinion about the situation. I watched the whole meeting, I believe, for what was uploaded. It was only like 20 minutes. I went back and watched parts of it, but I got pretty much the whole gist of it. Also, Jim Brown was there, the retired Hall of Famer NFL player. He played for the Cleveland Browns. He's been an activist from the old school, so I didn't know he was going to be there. I heard Kanye was going to be there. So we just wanted to get you guys taking, get my way in on the situation, let you know what I think. I think, of course, I seen the highlights of CNN and MSNBC, and I think Don Lemon is very hypocritical of him. I think it was a video that I watched of him criticizing the Brett Kavanaugh hearing about him drinking beer, and then I saw these clips of Don Lemon at the New Year's party and drunk and all this other stuff, and he's on CNN trying to say it was embarrassing for Kanye to try to reach out. Now, one thing people don't understand, and this video is going to be fair, balanced, and impartial. So to the best of my ability, because Kanye is not really a true conservative in what you might think. And actually, as of lately, conservatives have been more tolerant. He would be considered a moderate conservative, but maybe not even that. He's really an independent. I know some people were upset because he wears the "Make America Great" hat. He calls it his Superman cape now, but I think it's important because the Democratic Party, from looking in, from experience, has a stranglehold on the black community, especially black men with the mentality. So I'm gonna say I appreciate Kanye for coming out, having the courage to at least get the conversation started. And I watched the interview, and people who got triggered probably didn't watch the whole thing. And Kanye talked about, I believe, the street gangster Larry Hoover. He was speaking of, only reason I know about Larry Hoover, I'm gonna have to look up more info, because there was a rapper name that went by the name Rick Ross. He actually took the name from the real Freeway Rick Ross. I won't get into that. He goes by Ricky Rose, because the real Freeway Rick Ross sued him in court, so he started using Ricky Rose. But he did a song some time ago where he talked about, he said, "I think I'm Big Meech Larry Hoover." It kind of, the hook kind of went like, "I think I'm Big Meech Larry Hoover." So I guess Larry Hoover, what I'm piecing together, and like I said, after research, Kanye brought him up, and Larry Hoover's lawyer was actually there. It was sitting next to Kanye on the other side. I don't know if the woman, if she was a lawyer as well, but the gentleman who C-SPAN showed a different camera angle where you could actually see the lawyer on the other side of Kanye from the first video that I watched, because, I'm critiquing it. It's just my way in on what I saw. And he said, I think it's wrong because Kanye is for prison reform just as well as Trump is, and Obama, believe it or not, they both are for prison reform, because I think, it is biased without going into the detail. But I watched the whole interview. Kanye was talking about trying to bring businesses to the Chicago area. He talked about how it was encouraging when he wears the "Make America Great," seeing how he spoke about his father. And a lot of black men in the black community don't have role models, so they look to other men or other people as role models or figures. And not everybody thinks the same way too. Not everybody has the same ideology, but Kanye had brought something up to the point, like, where liberals, Democrats, they want you to think a certain way. And people were trying to make this interview out to seem crazy, but you need to watch the whole thing. In my opinion, Kanye brought up some very valid points. Some of it at first kind of sounded far-fetched. When he was speaking to Larry Hoover, he said he felt like he was himself in Larry Hoover in a different universe. That kind of gets into the metaphysical, sounds esoteric, but I understood where Kanye was coming from. I can interpret what he was saying. Kanye is a genius. He's brilliant, and he interjected some other things. And Trump listened. And believe it or not, Kanye and Trump, actually had differences. What I found out, I know that Trump was for the frisking. Some people were against the stop and frisk thing in New York, but Trump said after listening to Kanye, because Kanye's camp, from what Kanye relayed, he said he didn't like the stop and frisk. He thought it was bad, even for the residents of Chicago. And I think I agree there needs to be a better relationship between law enforcement. But Kanye actually brought up a well-balanced perspective that we have to talk about both sides of the problem. Yes, we do have bad policing, but at the same time, there's a responsibility that comes from our own people, black people, believe it or not. And I wasn't afraid to mention this a while ago. Earlier this year, from last year, I was invited onto a private conference call through the Discord app. It comes from the TDA secret account movement last year that sparked last summer, and they saw the video that I did on the black card and some other videos that I've done. So some people reached out to me, they invited me on there, and there were some people who felt like they didn't talk about their issues or they weren't really being recognized. So they kind of broke away and started their own server. Because on Discord, it's like it allows you to voice chat. I guess like I've never used the Facebook Messenger voice chat, but it allows you to do the voice chat. You can even upload documents on there. Different people have used this app to network with each other. I'm no longer really as active on there. It's been a while since I've logged in. I might check. But getting back to the meeting with Kanye, from what I could recollect, I think he has a lot of courage. He's very courageous. I read the comment section of one of the videos that rebroadcasted the meeting that he had with Trump, and a lot of people said very positive things. You did have trolls on there and haters, and you know, it's mighty funny the left claims that they're against bullying when they're doing a lot of the bullying. And I don't think, in my opinion, Kanye is no longer in a sunken place, like he said on Saturday Night Live. I think, you know, with the bipolar thing, a friend of mine was telling me a doctor actually came out and said, just because you have a mental disorder, people who are diagnosed with that doesn't affect your political views. And I can see that. I even had someone in my family who was close to me that was diagnosed with the mental disorder, and they were stating that a friend of mine sharing information that some people, scientists or clinical psychologists, looked into this and said it does not affect one's political views. So people that get diagnosed with these mental disorders, and Kanye kind of explained that this one doctor that diagnosed him actually said he had a sleep deprivation problem. And I won't get into these other things that go on with the medical industry, the medical mafia, as somebody call it, while they want to keep people in a controlled manner. You know, on these, there's like a connection with these government programs and people being on these psychotropic drugs that have chemicals in them that can alter the brain too. But I appreciate the fact Kanye also brought up business. He said Trump inspired him with the Adidas deal, that he went from so many billions to having through his Yeezy line, I guess. But Kanye, he's been working with Chance the Rapper. He's been working with other people behind the scenes to try to help Chicago. And some of the reporters asked Kanye about that. What was his plans, or how could he relay his plans to Trump? Because Trump mentioned before or prior to the election he was going to do something about Chicago. He was going to send the National Guard in. And then Kanye kind of had brought up too that they called Chicago Chirac because of all the crimes and drugs that were brought in or whatnot. So it was, in my opinion, overall, it was a good interview. It's a start. But keep in mind, it's only 20 minutes and you can only talk about so much in so much amount of time. But he did get Trump's attention. Trump listened to him express his views in the meeting or whatever. And I just think overall it's positive for somebody that has the notoriety, the fame that Kanye is able to do, because I noticed with a lot of other famous people, entertainers, I've never seen this before, where they don't even want to have dialogue, discussion. But you know, with doing presidential campaigns, you have supposed to have debates so people can see both sides. And I encourage people to really, before you formulate an opinion, if you feel a certain type of way, whether you're on the left or right, you should watch the whole interview. You should really watch it. I think it's important. And there were things that Kanye didn't necessarily see eye to eye with Trump on, but it was great for the fact they were able to have dialogue, discussion, and this is how you affect change. How you bring about change is it starts having a conversation, because if you're silent, you keep your mouth shut, you don't say anything at all. This is not a form of activism or true activism. It's in a form of rebellion. And I think from my aspect, from the outside looking in, I think that, like I said, to reiterate earlier, it's very positive to see this coming from Kanye. I'm trying to think of some other things that he brought up during the interview. I was going to take some notes. I probably thinking I should have, but just going off the top of the head. So I brought up, he talked about Larry Hoover. I'm gonna have to look up information on him or whatever, but he was stating that Larry Hoover was doing positive things, I guess, for the black community in Chicago. And then there's groups out there, whenever sometimes black activists or those individuals sometimes want to change their life around from being a drug dealer. I guess Larry Hoover was big in the drug game, but he was also, he recognized he wanted to use his drug money or the wealth he acquired to try to balance out maybe the damage that he done. Not all street gangsters may think this way, but he felt it was wrong for him to get 6 life sentences, which I think that's pretty harsh. And he was sent to a maximum penitentiary. So he explained this to Trump. And I guess him and his lawyer had a kind of a difficult time trying to explain, but I kind of get the concept. And I think Kanye is really serious as far as he wants to bring jobs back. And I saw another content creator that I think feels a certain type of way about Kanye, even though I noticed from her channel she had encouraged black people to vote for Trump before the election. I didn't find her channel till after the election had taken place, but yet she doesn't really like, I noticed, Kanye West or Candace Owens. So she said, how is it going to help the black community with Kanye bringing shoe factories back? And you have to look at it like this. It's at least a start. Kanye also interjected that we need to bring businesses over here and not just have things like Levi, he mentioned, for example, that makes jeans. They're made from China. And he said, we need products made over here. This is what helps empower our country. And I learned from years ago, I would not only have teachers in high school that mentioned big corporations selling our country out so they could get cheap labor. That's called outsourcing. Or if you're taking economics and you learn different things about supply and demand, about surplus and these trade agreements and things, China has really found a way to really undercut the United States of America, our economy. And this also affects the people and it can cause people to become discontent from all walks of life. This includes everybody, no matter who you are. There's people who really do want to work. Everybody out here does not necessarily want to collect food stamps. And that's not no knock against people that need those programs. Because in my opinion, I said, if I was a politician being bipartisan, what I would do for healthcare is I would require the banks to create a high yield interest account where it would go into an escrow, not just a savings account, where it would pay itself and people would not have to worry or be concerned about these high healthcare costs. I don't think anybody should worry about paying $200 a month for either by themselves just to have healthcare. This is really bad. It was Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. It was a disaster, in my opinion. And thank you, Yvonne Reinhardt, for that. I guess I didn't even know if the super chat, this is my first super chat ever working for, if you donated it, that's what it appears like. I greatly appreciate you there. But just in my opinion, if I was a politician, to reiterate, I would try to do something, because the banks have a lot of money. And I saw, even at one time when Loretta Lynch was Attorney General, I saw a presentation when they had got Yvonne Reinhardt says, thank you, praying for you. I appreciate you. Thank you for the prayers very much. It's greatly appreciated. But I noticed during the time period when Loretta Lynch was Attorney General, and there was this thing, it was on national TV where these banks were getting sanctioned. So I know Bank of America, Chase was involved, HSBC, and they had gotten in big trouble for the Securities Exchange Commission violations, and they were fined like in the billions. But to them, that's like a slap on the wrist if you study fractional reserve banking And the way that they're causing people to suffer over here, they're playing a mind game with people because people are not ready. Russell Thomas says, get ready. Here comes martial law Dorsey and the launch for the gold currency reset. Yeah, I did hear about that. Thank you for that. There's a lot of different things going on right now that could be possibly coming, because I heard recently that the Dow Jones had dropped, or things going on with the stock market. I have to try to pay more attention, but I did see that in the headlines that there was another plummet, that something happened again. So we could be on the break of something, because I heard the globalists, I'm not trying to make any predictions, the ruling class elite that control the banking system had plans with in the wintertime. I heard allegedly the next time they could possibly catch people by surprise or try to cause something to really mess up the midterms. And the globalists, the ruling class elite, they are the ones that you really need to, it's important to study the banking system, the financial sector. And I brought up in another video too, in my opinion, that African Americans should get this book called The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews. I actually have, I just ordered part 1. I have it with me tonight. I'm gonna try to show it real quick. I showed part 2 in one of my other videos, but this was put out by the Nation of Islam. The Jewish community years ago did not want Minister Farrakhan to release this book. They were afraid, but it shows how the Jews own slave reports. They played a role in the transatlantic slave trade. And a friend of mine was explaining they don't want minorities or African Americans to know certain groups of white people don't get along with Caucasian Jews. I'm mainly referring to Ashkenazi or Khazarian Jews. They converted to Judaism. And Farrakhan was explaining that the Jewish community came out and tried to debunk this and say, oh, that's not true. But the Nation of Islam's research department did research, and they said it was from their own literature. Caucasian Jews, what they read about, admitted. There's documentation, and this book, as well as part 2, goes over it. I purchased this from Amazon.com. It was cheaper than eBay when I saw it. I had it rush delivered in a matter of days, because they're trying to point the finger at Trump, calling him racist, this, that, and the other. But a friend of mine asked the question that would in America, because we're not in full-blown communism yet, which the Democratic Party is controlled, is moving towards this. They say socialist leads to anarchist dictatorship. For what, when you look at how China secretly is taking over, how Tim Cook admitted he doesn't answer to our Pentagon anymore. He answers to China. He's the CEO of Apple. Actually, the CEO of Google is Eric Schmidt, and that's an Ashkenazi name. Why is it a coincidence that the Jews are in control of the banking system, the entertainment system with Hollywood? Look at Harvey Weinstein. That's a Jewish name. Why they control the court system? Named Bernstein. That's a Jewish name. Feiger. Those are Jewish names. It's not a coincidence that these people were in positions of power, and they were explaining that this is from their own literature, and they didn't want black people or African Americans to connect these dots, that George Soros, who's Hungarian Jew, is funding a lot of these different events. Now, I understand where each side is coming from. Don't get me wrong, but he also funds, or is known to have been funded, white supremacist organizations, as well as Black Lives Matter. See, the game they play, they fund both sides so they don't win or lose, like the Rothschilds years ago funded both sides of the war. So no matter who won or lost, behind the scenes, they collected the money. That's in the movie Money Masters. Check out that documentary. That's what I'm basing that off of. Also, check out Monopoly Men. It helps explain these things and provide the evidence behind what I'm sharing with you guys in this video, as far as validity and solid information on this. So it's much deeper. Kanye is a mouthpiece. What he's doing is phenomenal. He still has a lot of respect. I never had any of his albums. I listen to hip hop, but I'll probably be buying Kanye's music to try to support him or whatever. I had Jay-Z's album. I pay attention to what's going on in many different aspects. I read articles, and a lot of the Jews actually control the mainstream outlets. And Kanye said on Saturday Night Live, 90% of the liberal media, they've been basically against Trump. Coming at, every time I come on Yahoo, I see something negative every day. And that also can cause a Mandela effect or Streisand effect that cause people to say, wait a minute, they'll look into it like, why is they're so biased? They weren't even like this on President Obama. They used to be biased but they weren't, it wasn't nothing negative. Like every single day is something negative about Trump, about Kavanaugh. I'm just saying, I'm not a registered voter personally, so you're getting this from a fair, balanced perspective from the outside looking in, and I have good reasons. And I'll say this, I forget to say this a lot of times. Two things: if I was a registered voter, in my opinion, I felt for the black community that Trump was the lesser of two evils. It's just my opinion. I would have voted for Trump if I was a registered voter, during the 2016 election. Just my opinion. I definitely would have, and it's not just I just woke up all of a sudden, or I'm trying to jump on a bandwagon. No, it's not about that. I've been studying the deep state, and I've been knowing about the Illuminati for years, and how devious these people are, and their control of the banking system, what they're doing. The Federal Reserve and the Treasury has been very malicious, especially tied in with these prosperity programs, this so-called Iraqi dinar thing. I believe it's true in my opinion. Just giving my opinion about this. And also, I want to say, whatever side you're on, I just hope, if I'm not campaigning for no one. If you're liberal, Democrat, or Republican, I respect your belief system, but I just hope whatever politicians that you vote for, you give money to, that they give the return on their promise, that they deliver, and you monitor and pay attention to what they're doing. Because a lot of Democratic, liberal controlled cities, throughout the years, had issues with, I've seen the corruption locally here in Detroit with Channel 7, WXYZ, with a lot of the scandals, like with even Fox 2 News with Robert Furcano, with Charlie LaDuff, the investigative journalist that worked for Fox 2. I don't know if he still does. And I looked up for Furcano's political party. He used to be the Wayne County executive. And I think our former police chief, not only our former Wayne County Sheriff Warren Evans, is now the Wayne County executive. But I looked up for Furcano's party affiliation. He was a Democrat. And I find it very hypocritical, too, that a lot of African-American women and some men that were bashing our former Mayor Kwame Kilpatrick, who was a Democrat. He was the last person I voted for during the primaries before I canceled my voter registration. Felt like they were concerned about his corruption. So I thought that these women and people were so self-righteous, and I see all the things that Hillary Clinton has done, and I weigh it in comparison to these alleged things that they say Trump has done. And Hillary's been a politician for a very long time, an establishment candidate. And I think it's very hypocritical when you read between the lines, and how I saw a lot of black women specifically, who I know 90% of them voted for Hillary Rodham Clinton, but were very critical of Kwame Kilpatrick. And Kwame spoke out from prison and said that him and former Governor Jennifer Granholm knew about that Flint water crisis, that the government of Flint was going to have to decide were they going to get off the Detroit water system or switch over to the river water system. They knew it. And I remember when they showed this years ago on Channel 7, they did a story, a special on it. Flint was going to have to make that decision. So Snyder happened to be a Republican governor, so they tried to put all the blame on him. So Kwame, for him to speak out from prison and say him and Granholm knew about that, that says a lot. And Flint was a Democratic, liberal controlled city, just like Detroit. So it's not Trump's fault. All this rhetoric that I hear, that is Trump this, Trump that, and I'm from the outside looking in. I'm not a registered voter, and I'm not campaigning for nobody. I'm just saying this is what I see is very hypocritical. I saw what Judge Mathis said at Aretha Franklin's funeral. Excuse me, by the way. And I think it was an awesome funeral. I liked it. On a side note, just me personally. But I'm paying attention to what's going on. I read the articles, and I think it was very biased. And Jennifer Granholm, also our former Governor Granholm, before Snyder came to office, also colluded privately with Hillary Clinton. This is a fact. This was mentioned on a Mildred Gaddis show in Detroit, where she kept Obama and John Edwards' name off the ballots in the primary. So Hillary's known, she not only cheated Bernie Sanders, but she was trying to cheat even President Obama during the primaries, and she even made a threat to Obama that, something could happen to him, but he won in such a landslide that it was hard to stop. And then they secretly met at the Bilderberg meeting, where they decided that Hillary would get Secretary of State and Obama would take the lead job, basically. And I knew he was going to win. He was going to beat McCain. I told a friend of mine who worked Obama's campaign the night before the election, he was trying to say it was hypocritical of me not voting. I said, at the time, I didn't know all this stuff about Obama. I donated $10 to his campaign. Friend of mine the night before says it's hypocritical of me not voting, and said a lot of his friends or family, he didn't understand why they weren't voting or whatever. or whatnot, despite I felt, that I already knew it was basically sold up, that, I knew about these things dealing with the Illuminati. But he said, I told him, I said, Obama's going to win. So, we haven't really been in touch that much since or whatever. But I want to say this. I uphold the process of voting. What it is, I don't want to be attached to the negative consequences that come from being a registered voter. Let me say this again. I uphold being voting, but remember, that's on the public side. That's under the statutory jurisdiction. And voting, being a registered voter, is a contract. I understand it's already your right to vote, and understand there's a difference between recording and registration. There's two different jurisdictions too, by the way. And I would have to do some other things, which I attended this event some years ago where I was being taught by an elite group of people. So I have very strong reasons why I'm not a registered voter. Also, there was a sister years ago. She was a former Detroit police officer. It was an activist group, these meetings I attended, and she told every black person that would come to these meetings they needed to cancel, get rid of their voter registration at the time, because it's a secret contract. And she said at the time, the only thing that could stop Donald Trump from enacting is the judiciary branch. Okay, yeah, I caught that. I had to read it quick. Yeah, I did hear about that. Allegedly, it was Kavanaugh played an important process or whatnot. I'm not sure how the things are going to go down with the martial law. To respond to the comment in the chat, because the message difference, I'm on my phone versus my laptop, so I can only read the message for so long when it pops up before it disappears. But I do want to try to acknowledge you guys too in my reasons. But finishing up, the sister years ago was saying she was a former Detroit police officer. She encouraged, it was a lot of black people would come from all walks of life. They had corporate badges on. Women would come with their children. They would receive the information. She was with the Nubian Nation of Moors. It was her brother was a Hebrew Israelite, brother Ben David. He had been to Israel, from what I was told by some other friends of mine, because I'm connected to the conscious community as well. And then there was Yamasee Moors connected to like a Native American group. So they were like had come together to basically share empowering information, what was going on behind the scenes with us. But voting registration is a contract. But if I was a registered voter, me personally, I would have voted for Trump. That's just me from what I've researched, from looking in. I'm not saying he's perfect, but in comparison to the crimes that Hillary and Barack Obama have committed with Benghazi, the FISA memo, which I'm aware of, the illegal wiretapping that did happen when Trump first got elected. They tried to make it seem like he was crazy. That went on. Things I pay attention to. The IRS scandal under Obama with Lois Lerner, how he had Dr. Ben Carson targeted after Dr. Ben Carson spoke at Obama's prayer breakfast and said the White House had contacted him at the time because they didn't like his comments about healthcare reform. Dr. Ben Carson, during a prayer breakfast, had interjected what he felt he would do to try to fix the healthcare system or whatnot. And the White House called, and behind the scenes, Dr. Ben Carson's, I hear his foundations were targeted. Also, current Supreme Justice Clarence Thomas, I heard. I didn't know this. I read an article that his wife was a member of the Tea Party, and she was targeted as well. So I do read. I'm astute. I pay attention. I listen to hip hop music. I don't fit into the normal stereotype, and I'm not controlled. I'm a free thinker. I'm open-minded. Like when you had this thing going on with the rapper Eminem was trying to get people to choose a side, but Eminem was hypocritical, who criticized Trump for these different things. I hear he lives in Sterling Heights, Michigan, from some sources out there that commented in a video and said he has a wall built around his house. I think it's very hypocritical to criticize Trump for having a wall when Eminem has a wall. And Eminem was the controversy of hip-hop. He was the Donald Trump of hip-hop at one time. I remember, you can look up the situation he had with Elton John years ago. He was called homophobic and all these things before he apologized, before the deep state got a hold of Eminem's neck and said, calm down, we control you. And I hear that MTV, the reason why a lot of music artists are liberal and bash Trump, because they won't get their music played. I heard back in the 90s, they came out with something and told music artists they're going to threaten their sponsorships and advertisements. This is why they're bullying Kanye West and trying to get him to shut up because they don't control him. But Kanye has already reached this plateau, and so many people, millions of people are awake. So Kanye is not controlled, and I appreciate the brother from stepping out the box, speaking his mind, and doing what he's doing. So this is what this video is about. I didn't mean for it to be this long, but I just, wanted to get you guys weigh in. So far, I would, go a little bit longer. I'm at the, I call it personally, I'm at the slavery plantation. I just wanted to shoot a video about the meeting that took place. Don't forget to thumbs up. When you thumbs my video up too, it lets me know out there you support me, you appreciate me, and it also lets the haters and trolls know, what I'm saying is confirmation and validity. This is straight freestyle. I'm going off the top of the head. So I really liked the meeting overall. What Kanye had to interject. He talked business. I recommend those out there watch the whole meeting if you haven't, because a lot of people get triggered just because he has to make America great. But listen to the whole thing. It was points he disagreed, but he actually caused Trump to listen to him. And this is what people, I told my mother at the time, who I believe she voted for Hillary Clinton after the election or whatever, that when you have all this vitriol towards Trump, it's like the Democratic Party is neglecting its constituents. That what are they going to do if they care so much about black people or the downtrodden, the poor and suffering? At least I thought that they were going to try to work with Trump. They might not have to agree from a bipartisanship approach, but at least for prison reform, for people who don't have a voice, they should try to do something to help the people in the poor neighborhoods instead of just having this rebellion and just obstruction and just being disobedient and not trying to work with them at all. I think it hurts the party and the constituents, their supporters overall. Just my way in. So thank you guys for watching. The few that did join me, once again, don't forget to thumbs up, smash the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed. I do appreciate you. You can follow me on Facebook at Dorsey's Resource. I'm on Twitter at Dorsey's Resource. And oh, by the way, I forgot I did not give a disclaimer, but this video was for informational, educational purposes only. Please understand everyone's individual circumstance or situation may be different. It's up to every individual competent person. Please do your own homework research into the matter being discussed. Dorsey's Resource is not liable or responsible for any misuse of this information. These are simply my thoughts and opinions on the topic. With that being said, all rights are reserved. I see someone I have to listen to it was too busy to hear. To my Aunt V Hart, big shout out to you, to my Aunt V Hart. Thank you for joining the chat. That's my time. Appreciate you guys. Until next time, take care.